you do put questions into the question and answer panel, because it's much easier to track that if we can do that. Because I won't be watching the chat as I'm painting, because a lot of it will go away really quickly. So, if you can help us put questions answer in there, and we'll answer. And please do ask, because if you have a question, I guarantee somebody else has that too, just isn't willing to ask it. We do have David here with us. He was my moderator last year. I don't know how I rate so well that John gave me the best guys in there. David is the production manager for the Bones USA department. So you want to say hi to everybody there, David?
Hello, everyone. And I did start the polling and the recording functions while you were greeting everybody.
Oh, well, thank you very much for doing that. So David will be watching the questions in case I miss them, and he'll chime in and keep us in hopefully in focus and in screen. If you see any issues or I'm out of screen, just go ahead and talk up. Or you have questions, please ask about it. And really, you can use any miniature you want. I just chose something so that if you wanted, you'd be on the same thing. So I really hesitate. I don't really like having quote unquote beginner classes, because I don't want anyone to think that they can't do any of this. And my goal here is that you'll have all the tools to leave here today that you will be able to do any freehand you want. And really, a lot of it is all the technique. And if you can understand the techniques, and then you can change it to do really anything. So that's my hope, that we'll come away here today with that. We're going to start with, let me switch to my PowerPoint. We're going to start with just a quick things. Brushes tends to be a question, so we'll talk about that. David has a questions. What are the factions? Second time I've seen that. The factions are, it's just a fun game they're playing. So there's 4 different groups that are vying for power in the in this universe, and so everybody gets to vote for one, and they're going to see who wins at the end. And they've produced a bunch of miniatures, and each of the miniatures are part of the different factions. All right. So let me switch this on real quick. So David, is it possible to see this or not?
The document camera?
What are you seeing right now on the screen?
Right now, all I'm seeing is your main camera.
Okay. Just a minute then.
Oh. And someone just asked if there was a PDF, like a handout or something with the class.
I do not have a handout. But I can work on one. Just gonna have to minimize this and get this to work here. Oh, I know, I forgot what I did last time. Sorry, I just switched to multiple screens. I apologize to keep everybody waiting here. I had to move my Zoom to another page. Well, I'm not worried about it. I will move on. All right, switching to document camera. Oops. All right, looks like I could have gotten a clean paper towel. So what I want to start a little bit with is discussing a little bit about the freehand. So if you're sort of painting along, I'm going to zoom in here. Lock the focus here. So this is the miniature we're wanting to start with. I've basically painted it the base coat color. And what we're going to do is we're going to end up putting some dark shades in this. We're going to paint most freehand over most of this back side. So really we need to do a very quick blend so that when there's freehand on it, there's some color changes between the depths. So I need to have like the upper areas of these need to be lighter, and then I go down darker, lighter, darker, lighter. And so we get this, undulating a little bit. So that's where we'll be working ahead. So if you want to listen and be working on that, that would be great. I'm going to add, there's not enough dark in here, so I'm going to come back. And when I get my paints out, we'll start putting some of these lines in. I want to talk about brushes. So I have two favorites now. Well, actually, I have several. I've tried almost everything. I'm going to show you what I've got. So my preferred. So preferred for all my workhorse, this is a Hobby Lobby brush. You can get 12 in a pack, and this is like in the stencil area. It's a number 8 brush. So I do a lot of my working, like base coating, all this stuff with these big brushes. They are synthetic and they'll end up getting bent a little bit, but if it's $5 for 12, it doesn't matter if they go out, they don't last very long. Two next favorites are, they have sideways so you can read it. So all the white back ones, they have these white, I could zoom back up. So all these white back ones are the Winsor Newton 8408. Raphael 8408. And then they have these, which are the 8404s. And the difference is, you can see that the 8404s have, the barrels are a little bit thicker, whereas these ones have longer, skinnier things. It is important to keep your brushes in the covers. These are the two that I'm going to use today. And so this is my 000. So you can see that's pretty small compared to that. Really for freehand, you don't have to buy super expensive brushes. You just need a brush that holds the tip. Typically the natural hair ones work a little better, because after a while you'll see that these the synthetics, they will you see the tip here. So I can get it. You see the tip there, it's got a little bit of a bend into it, and so that makes it hard to get nice straight lines. And so that's one way to help a lot with that. Let's see, was there any questions? But really, if you find a brush that will hold a tip, that's all you need. We're gonna probably do a lot of the detail work with this one. This is my 000. This is really for drawing fine lines. A lot of the freehand has to do with drawing little lines. So to give you an idea of where we're going today, this is from James Wapple. This is like a fairly easy design he's done on there. And we're going to do that on the bottom of the cloak. And what you have to do is you need to break down what he's done, because this is really just a bunch of lines. So let me draw next to this and see if we can see what he's done. So there's a line on the top and a line on the bottom. And then he puts a diamond shape there. There's a dot in the middle. And then he has put a line in the middle. And it's good to think about when you're breaking down patterns and stuff to see what can I translate into lines. So see, we've got this line, and then on each of these, he's got a line in the middle, and it makes a plus, if we think about it. And then all he's done is he's put a curved line and another curved line. So you can see once we break it down like this, it becomes much easier to do this. Now, it's real interesting. If you see how he's done, I've watched him do this, and normally I would put a very dark background on it, and these were like production miniatures for him. So he had to do, did my feed just freeze? Okay, there we
It
go.
did for a second, but it's back.
Okay, thank you. I watched him paint these, and that's why I decided to do this design, because he just did them so quickly, and I thought this would be a good training thing. And it was interesting that he did not do a very dark background on these, which we're going to do. We're going to paint a very dark background behind to help this stick up. But what it is he has enough control with this painting that he's left the darker half, bottom half of this cloak very dark. So if you look, you see this highlight comes down and then it goes to dark. So he purposely painted the miniature so this whole area was dark. So then when he put his freehand over it, it became bright. So he didn't have to do 2 layers. You'll see when I do a lot of my painting, I ended up, all of my freehand tends to have a black line around it so that it really makes it pop out. So let me show you an example of that.
We had a couple questions come up.
Oh, yeah.
Someone asked if there was a way to remove a curl from the synthetic brushes.
Get a new brush. So yeah, once they start curling it, that's done. And then what color is the base coat? The base, good question. Anonymous. So we've got base coat. I've done cinnamon red and orange, and you could all the way go. You could also go to, this is nightshade purple. Sorry, you can't read it, but it says nightshade purple. And this is just a very quick blend. It doesn't have to be, it's not totally perfected because the most of it's going to be covered. So we're going to do the bottom half. Here, I'll show you why. We're going to do the bottom half with a design. And this is a different color miniature, but where we're going to go is we're going to end up doing a dark band across the bottom. And then we're going to learn to do these stripes. So a cross hatch pattern across the cloak. So here's another example of that. So we're going to end up doing that. Okay. So, and if you notice that most of the cloak gets covered up with freehand, but there's little things in between. So, but it's good to have, I need to have everything in here needs to be darker. And then everything up here needs to be lighter, because what happens if I don't, then I'll have to hand paint in between all my freehand, and that makes it very difficult. And if you can see on this freehand here that it's very small lines, but there's black lines around everything. Okay. But that makes it really stick up really well. Okay. So as you prep, we just want to have the folds like this. This one's done really well too. See, it's a very quick blends, but there's a dark shadow in here, and then there's highlights on the high points. But it's not perfectly blended, if you can see. This has just been airbrushed and then not as much changed. So this is pretty close, but I have to add some more dark. It's not dark enough. All right. So I wanted to show you the lines. So let me turn it so you can see them right. So if you look in here, every bit of this has a little black line all around it. And so even in between the little pieces, there's little freehand lines. And so today we're gonna teach you how to use your brush and how to load your brush, and some techniques on how to make these little lines a lot easier. And then you can see the background here. We can turn it a little bit better. There's very dark lines on the outsides, and then there's dark. So the background colors tend to always be darker than the lighter colors. So then you always have to come back with a light yellow, and you do have to go to white. So anytime we're doing some of these, because then it'll really stand up. So if you look at the other side, you can see that around all the edging around all this has black lines. So this really makes your freehand look good if you can do that. And realize that most of the time we're going to draw the black lines in first, and then we take the lighter color and then we push the lighter color, we push it until it makes those black lines super, super thin. So you don't necessarily have to be super careful with them because you're going to put a color over it, and then you're good. All right. Sheldon asked, did you paint the entire banner? And yes, I did. And then Amber asked, seems this is the first step after priming for you. Is there a reason for that? Amber, can you clarify your question? Because I'm not totally sure what we're saying, what you're asking. And it was in context when I was saying something a minute ago, but now I'm out of context. So let's see if we can zoom better on this.
She said, would you freehand before doing like the skin and etc.?
Oh, yeah, normally you're correct. Freehand is last, typically. You're right. So for this model here, so for this model here, she was painted all the way. And then at the end is when I came in and did these designs on her cloak. So I did all the shading and, oh, we're out of focus, sorry. I forgot to lock. Okay, focus is locked. So I did all the freehand, and then I started working in all these little colors and dots. So on both these, so everything was done, and then the tabard was done last. Okay, and then for the painting in the back, all of the background areas were all done, and then I did the freehand dragon on top. And when I started this, I used a very bright red, and then when I put it with the model, all of a sudden it was too bright. You could only see the banner. So I had to go back in and make the red add some blue to it, so it would recess back into the thing, and that was not very fun. So it's really good to make sure all your colors work with everything before you get too far. All right, so let's move on to the next part here. I'm going to switch to my camera so I can show you a few things.
Christina did ask, do you do anything different if you're doing freehand on a very light or a white surface?
Yes, so if you're doing like tone on tone, that's a good point. You would just what you can do is you'll have maybe paint your surface white and shade it a little bit, and then when you do your you see a lot of cloth that's tone on tone where it's white patterns on a white cloth, and you just have to slowly darken your light color until it ends up being a little bit darker so that you can actually see it, but not too much. All right, so I want to show you what there's some important things with the way you just hold your hands. So to be steady enough to do a lot of this stuff, I'll take my hands and I normally put them, I'll touch one side here, and then I'll put the other hand down here. And when I'm doing freehand, I typically will put my palms together. So now I've got 1, 2, 3. So I've got 3 points of contact, and that will help you be a lot steadier. Okay, so now let me show you with the brush. So I got my brush here, holding the mini, and I put my hand down, 1, 2, 3, and you can even lock your elbows in. And so you sort of crunch them into your side, and then you can be very steady with this. And I'm always moving. You'll see that I'm always moving the miniature so that I'm pulling towards myself. When you learn to draw the first time, they tell you if you want to make straight lines, there's 2 ways to do it. You either turn your paper so you pull towards yourself, or you pull away from yourself, and that is one of the better ways to draw straight lines. So we want to do the same thing with the brush. We always want our strokes sort of doing this or doing this, and that will help us a lot getting being more steady and getting straight lines. Another thing you will see, and I'll explain it as I'm doing it, but I want to show you it here with my pen. When I'm pretend like this paper is my miniature, my brush will be loaded, and I'm going to to control, because if I go really hard down, you're gonna have a really thick line. And so you're always trying to keep the line super thin. So I'm gonna get close to miniature, and then I do a brush stroke like this, and typically I'll miss. And then I'll come back and I go down a little bit and I make another brush stroke and I missed. I come back and I make another brush stroke and I hit, or I didn't hit yet and I miss. So you'll see that I'm doing this, and each time I'm do a stroke, I get a little bit closer. And pretty soon you'll get where you can get with it, you'll miss once and then you'll hit it. But as you start, maybe you have to do a few, and eventually you'll hit, and then you draw your line. And that helps you control the thickness of your line, because if you push light, you have a thin line. If you push heavily, then you'll have a thicker line. So there's a lot to do with that. And I will explain it when I'm doing it. So I just want you to see in a different manner of how we're doing that. All right. Oops, didn't mean to stop video. Let's go back to this. Okay. So when I was talking about James Wapple's picture here, remember I said that giving everybody my passcode, that's great. Remember I said that you could see that when he painted it, he went from light to dark, and I want to show you why that matters. So this is a little optical illusion. Get it centered here. Okay, so if we look at this, which is darker, A or B? Let's see if everybody's awake here in chat. Ryan's cheating. He says they're the same. Okay, let's see if Ryan's right. I'm going to slide this down. I think Ryan was right. Good job, man. They're the same. This is an optical illusion. And why is it they're the same? It's because if you look at it, there's a shading diagonally across here, there's shading. So the colors around it are darker so that it appears like it's lighter. So this up here, this is a white square here, and up here it's a black square. So that's what I'm saying, by controlling the color behind your freehand will make a big difference. So overall, you can't tell that there's a difference, but when I put them together, they're the same. And that's because of what's around it. So there's no shading here, and you can see there's shading that starts right here and it gets to darker. So you can do a lot with your freehand by paying attention of what colors is behind it. All right, so let's put some colors out. So I do like to use a wet palette. Some people ask, I'll zoom out so while we do this part here. Some people ask, well, how much water do you put in? Well, it really depends on where you live. So I'm in Nevada and we are extremely dry. So I will typically fill this is just okay, so I actually do have a wet palette, but I'm just lazy. I like my Tupperware lid. This is just a Ziploc lid. And I bought a sponge. If you don't have a sponge, fold up a paper towel or a napkin and put it in there, okay? And for Nevada, I typically fill my water up to the level of the sponge. Boom. So right here, the water is sort of sponge level right now. So it's like sort of a level area. If you're in a very humid climate, you may use very little water or maybe none. You'll have to decide that. I do like to use a wet palette. And I use this is baking paper. So a lot of people think, oh, is that wax paper? It's not wax paper. This is baking paper. So you go to the cookie or baking aisle, and there'll be, it's called parchment paper, and comes in sheets so that you can cook cookies on it. And so typically the label will show that, but, and I just cut it up the size I want. You'll see a lot of people, you'll notice when this turns on, you'll watch, it's gonna curl up on us. Okay, so this always does this. The best thing to do is I would ask you to you can put your paint bottles here, and it'll relax on its own after a little bit. Most people, what they will do is when they do this, they will pick the paper up and you flip it. But I want you to notice, look at all these water droplets on here. There's all these water droplets, and I don't want these water droplets because it's going to mess with my paint consistency. So you want to keep water droplets down. And it's okay if you end up with some water droplets on the top, you should wipe them off, okay? Because your paint consistency is super, super important. And you'll find that sometimes you might have to change your paint in the middle of a thing. And I've seen certain papers that, like, I really like the Reynolds a lot better. The Costco one's a lot cheaper, but it seems to weep water faster. And so like then after a little while, I'll see all these little droplets everywhere, and that causes issues. Danny asked, what do you do if your parchment wrinkles in the middle? I just sort of fold it out, and I'm not super worried about wrinkles. It'll be just fine. I'm really concerned about how much moisture is here, because you have to control the paint consistency, or you will be a very unhappy person. When I started, I always would use flow improver on everything. I don't use it anymore because I've gotten used to not using it. But if you're struggling getting your brush to paint like nice thin lines, or for the paint flowing off your brush, you can add a little bit of this to every one of your colors. And so if you're doing it without a wet palette, then I would say a little bit of flow improver is a good idea. Not necessarily required. You can use it with water too. I've just seen that this is a very good learning tool. It's sort of like training wheels on a bicycle. I need them for a little while, and it helps me a lot. But then once I've got it down, I can ride my bicycle without training wheels now. So most of the time. All right. So I'm going to put colors down. I do like to put them in order, and I'm going to show you, and you'll see why. There's a specific way I'm putting them out. So I'm going to put, I'm going to put white on the left, and then I'm going to go in color order. So that's pure white. This is non-metallic gold highlight, which I'm super glad that Anne made these. Again, you can use any lighter yellow that you normally use. I should put that here. With this non-metallic gold base, this is I have a fellow Golden Demon painter, Jeffrey Howden, and he gave me his recipe. So I have to use my pokey tool. My paint's a little bit jammed up here. So he gave me the recipe, and he used this, oops, a little too much. He used this is not gold non-metallic base. So I can't find I have a real bottle, but this was the first bottle that Anne made, because I gave her this recipe, and then she was able to get us, because they didn't make this color anymore from GW. And so I'm super glad that we have this, because it's one of my favorite colors. And then this is a gold non-metallic shadow. You're going to always have to add black to this, because this is it's really not dark enough. I find a lot of the triads are dark enough. If you want to use a different brown, I'm okay with that. It just needs to be a darker than this. And then we will need black. Okay. So put a little bit here, and we're going to mix them. And I sort of would like you to put them out left to right, and you'll see why I'm going to do that later. And my engineer mind likes it that way, but you can change it later. But for this class, it might be useful to do that. I'm going to put a little bit of colors out so we can prep the base area of the mini. I did paint it a little bit to make sure I didn't waste your time. So these are lava orange and cinnamon red, and really doesn't matter what colors you choose. Use what you like, because I think it's easier to paint if you paint something you want to paint. So then this is a purple. This is nightshade purple. You won't be able to read it, but it's 09022. All right. So set all these up now. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, let's get the base painted here. Oops. Sorry, my desk just went up. One of those electric desks, and I put something on it and it moved up. Okay, so I really started this. I painted it black, and I used the airbrush to spray paint the red and a little bit of the you know, the two colors over it, but I would like to have a little bit more definition. We know that we're going to put a band of color here, so I don't have to worry about too much about the base. So it has to be here up that we're concerned about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this red. This is my number 8 synthetic cheap brush. And you always start your dark color in the dark area.
The mini's out of frame.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, let's get this fixed up here.
And someone did ask what black were you using?
Oh, pure black. So that's 09037. So I'm going to take a little bit of the purple and put it with this red. I want it just to take the red a little bit darker. So I had to keep adding red until it's a little bit darker. And then we'll just quickly put in some dark areas. And I want it to be a little bit more orangey, so I'm going to add a little bit of the orange to it too, because it became really red. There we go. And notice I'm not being super concerned about perfect blends. I want to do this so that if you're going to do very little freehand, or the question about like having the white on the white, then you would be more concerned about having a very clean, good blend. So it depends on what you're doing. In this situation, we know that we're going to cover most of this with, by water. We're going to cover most of this with freehand, so we're not super concerned, but it's really hard to fix things and paint in between. Let me put so I always will have my paper towel, because we're going to do a lot of wiping off. And I will zoom in further when we get going. I just wanted to zoom out a little bit so you can see what we're doing here. So then I'm just going to touch up these highlight areas so that it's brighter. And I'm using the side of my brush to pick up these folds, because I want a very nice contrast between them. And there's method to my madness, so you'll see that. Okay. So I'll zoom in so you can see that better. Okay, so see how we're very bright to dark. Okay, now I'll probably even add a little bit of yellow to bring this orange up a tad. And so really, I'm not being super concerned about my blends. I'm just trying to have some contrast on these. Okay. So it became very yellow then. So I'm just going to put some more orange, but the orange over a lighter color makes it show up better. Sometimes it's good to put a lighter color down. Okay. So super quick. And I think it'll look right. Let that dry. And even if you see like it's not looking exactly like you want, you can take, let me put this in frame here. Here's a good tip here. You can always grab, if you need just a little bit of water, you just touch your brush to the sponge, and I grabbed a little bit of water, and I can bring it back here and see I've made a very milky wash, and then I can put that over the whole thing. And that's a good enough blend for what we're going to do. All right. All right, let me get the focus out just a tad. And I like it to, let's get it to lock on this. Okay, good. So let me give some tips on our brush loading. So I'm going to start with a we're gonna start still with this 8 brush. We're gonna paint in, we're gonna block in this dark area. So let's take a little bit of the black and mix it with your, so I want this brown to go down a shade. So I don't want it to be black, but you can see where if I add a little bit more brown, it's a really dark brown now. So we're going to paint a section on the bottom. And I'll have people ask, well, then how do I keep this? Sorry, I was off the thing. I paint this bottom. How do I keep this the same height all the way across? Well, here's the hint how to do that. Let me switch you to my camera so you can see what I'm going to do. You can make yourself a little template, and there's two ways you can do it. I grab myself some scissors and a piece of paper. So a lot of times I'll hold my piece of paper up to the miniature, and I'll figure out about how wide it looks right to me. So that looks right there. Okay. So I've marked it with my pen. Then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut myself a little strip. And if you do it right, you could probably do it with a ruler or something, so you'll get a very square line. Okay, so I've made this little strip of paper. That's one thing you can do. Second way you can do it is you can use painter's tape. I couldn't find painter's tape, so I'm going to use my expensive Tamiya tape, which you don't have to have this. You can just do painter's tape. Or you do have to be careful with some of the tapes because you'll see that it'll pull your base coat off sometimes. But we're going to use this because it'll be very helpful. And I'll show you why. So I'm going to cut the little end off of this because that's not sticky. And then I'm going to use my little template because I already measured it. I normally put the tape on there and measure it. And this way I can cut my tape. And this is going to help us keep, we're going to draw on the miniature with very thin white lines. That's too thick for me. I do always store my tape in a plastic bag because you'll get fuzz and stuff on your tape, and then it won't seal very well when you do it. So I take it right out of the package, and it always goes back into a package so that the tape stays clean. So I do that with the painter's tape too. So I cut this, it's a little bit thick, so I'm going to cut it in half again. You can sort of stick it on the scissors. Sometimes I'll take a ruler and actually measure it out if I have a specific thing I would like to hit. Let's see if that works there. I'll hold up the miniature, see if that's right. That's way too big, so I'm going to cut it again. I cut it 3 times and it's still too short. I had a carpenter friend that would always tell me that. Oh, sorry. Probably should have done this ahead of time. It's fun to see people struggle here. All right, almost there. This isn't really hard. I'm serious. Here, let me do it with the bigger piece. Well, sorry about this. Let's see, here we go. Okay, good. again, sorry. Epic fail here, but we'll get it. I am going to use the other edge because you know that that is a factory edge and it'll be straight. So I just have to get it started. There we go. Okay. So now I've got a nice straight edge that I can use. So I'm going to show you how I use both ways. So let me switch back to the camera. So if you don't have tape, you can probably find a piece of paper. And then what I do, take my fine brush, this is my 3/0. I'll take a little bit of the white, and I do want it sort of watered down so it's sort of thin. Because what happens is it's nice to make a bunch of little marks on this, because if I make a little white dot on here, it's not going to really make a difference. And it's not going to cause, I can fix it very easily. So I'm going to take this, and you can freehand it too if you feel like you can see it, but sometimes you need some tools to be able to do it. So I normally start on the edge, and then I've loaded my brush, and then I put a little dot. Okay. I normally thin it out a little bit more. So I picked up a little bit of water, made it a little bit thinner, and then I'll put it on here and I make a little dot. And I normally hit all the high spots.
The mini is out of frame.
Oh, thank you. So I normally hit all the little high spots all the way across. And you can lay it down, make it easier sometimes. This lets you measure everything, and then you get some very even things, and especially when you're going around folds, it is sometimes hard to tell how wide or what something's supposed to be.
Someone asked, what was the highlight on the cloak again?
The highlight was Lava Orange 09218. Any orange brighter than your red would be just fine. Okay, so now you see that I've got lines across there, and we've all done connect the dots, and so that's what we're going to do. I think I do want to put one more in this bottom area because it's hard to see if I've got it right. And what's nice about this, I can basically just connect all these dots. With a thin, I've thinned out my white a lot.
Mini's out of frame.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. I'll get. So freehand, I have to sort of lock in a little bit more.
And someone just said, since we weren't ready for that process, should we just eyeball it?
Yep. You can eyeball it. I'm just giving you the tools to make things very, to help you be successful in other ways when you don't have that. So, and really you can eyeball it. And this is a good way to eyeball it too, because now I've drawn this line and I can turn it back and forth and see, does it look right? And I can get things pretty close before I even do a lot of work. And then if it's off a little bit, I just fix it. And then as it starts getting dialed in, you can, our eyes are very good at, so I can see that I'm a little bit high right here. So that I just take my dark color and I just fix it a little bit. So a lot of freehand is just being fixing your mistakes. So I just take my dark color and I fixed it. So I'm not caring about below because I can fix that, but you can see that now and that looks pretty even all the way across. Most people can eyeball it, but if you're feeling I don't feel comfortable doing that because of the folds, then this is a good way to make sure that you do end up even.
A couple of people are saying that it seems like the camera's out of focus.
Oh, let me try that again. I'm going to zoom in further, so I think that probably might help.
I thought it was just my video feed.
Okay. Let me get everything lined up again. Okay, does that look better?
That does seem a bit better to me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. All right, and thank you, David. All right.
And someone just asked, how broad of a band are we aiming for at the base there?
We are wanting to do. You're wanting to do this pattern at the bottom, so it is a pretty good width. So we're going to put a diamond and some lines in it. So, and there'll be a top line and a bottom one. Okay. So now I want to show you some stuff about. I want to show you some things about loading your brush a little bit, and we'll get this centered here. One thing that you may not be able to see on here is when I'm loading my brush, I will be spinning it a little bit. So it's very subtle, but you can see that it's like sharpening a pencil in a pencil sharpener. So you put your pencil here and then you sort of sharpen the pencil. You're doing that scene because as I'm dragging it through the paint, I want my tip to be, I want to refix the tip. And so if I spin it, the paint will stick on it. And then if you spin it, it'll sort of distribute the paint evenly around it. And then you'll have, and it will actually sort of sharpen the tip for you. So you have a nice connection here. And when we touch the paint, I just sort of touch it this much. So see how much is on the tip? Because we're just gonna be drawing thin lines. And you'll see that you'll be pulling the paint out. See how I'm dragging these little sections out here? Because when I'm loading the brush and I'll tell you, I'm spinning it and then I drag it out and you can see it's making a line. And so you can already see that the brush is loaded properly because I'm making lines. And so as we're painting today, you're gonna see that I'm always dragging it. For the freehand, I don't necessarily do this for everything, but for the freehand, I'm always dragging it. And it's nice because you'll get this area will start drying a little bit. And then you drag the wet paint through a little bit of dry area. It really helps get your brush loaded properly. And so I'm always loading it this way. And then as I'm wiping paint off sort of, and then I spin it and that sharpens it a little bit. So then you have this very nice tip to be able to pull on. Do you realize that your brush, if you look very close at your brush, this is a razor blade. Your brush, even no matter how well I spin it or sharpen it, it looks like this when you're done. If you look at it, there'll always be a sharp end and then a flat side and sort of a rounded. And so when you bring it up to the miniature, you want to look at the shape of your brush and then you spin your brush until I've got that sort of sharp side down, so and then paint that way. If I do this way, think of how big my line's going to be this way. So if you don't pay attention to the shape of your brush, and this is really small and this is an extreme example, but pay attention to the shape of your brush and then make sure you'll address the miniature, get it to miniature, and then spin it. Okay, there's the sharp side, and then you'll be able to do straight lines. This will help a lot in your line width control. Okay, now there would be some situations maybe I do want to shade it because I do want a little bit area so I can shade in there. But for most of the line drawing, just do that. And so now, I'll be giving you clues. I'll say, okay, I just spun my brush. I'm spinning it. Okay, that's the sharp point. Now I'm gonna draw my line. Cool. So let's go back to our thick line. And I would like to, I'm gonna paint in. So I'm going to paint in our thick area first. So using the dark color, I'm using a big brush for this part. So I'll quickly put in this dark background area. And I'll go all the way up to where to where I painted my.
It's the mini's off camera again.
I'm so sorry, people. I'll get this right. Here, let me move the camera instead of me because I keep being off, and I want to see the palette too. There we go. This might work better. What is happening is I'm bracing my hands on the table, and so that's causing me to pull back so I can be. So right now I am pulling away with the brush, and I'm going right up to the white line that we drew, so that we have a nice smooth line. Got a little chunky right there, so I'm gonna take that off. So I gotta lay it sideways and paint differently. I'm gonna add a light because I need a light to see. Okay. David, thank you so much for watching that. I'll get this straight. Not a professional. That's what we'll say. Okay, so basically we're just doing a dark brown stripe at the bottom. And a lot of the freehand is all about being willing to fix errors. And so you're gonna mess up, I guarantee it. Don't worry about it, just fix it.
Someone just asked, what color are you currently using?
Oh, that's great. I'm currently using the non-metallic gold shadow 09301. And I'm mixing a little bit of black with this because I want it to be darker. If you're using other colors, go ahead and just use your dark brown with a little bit of black because we want this background to be darker. And then I'm coming right up to that white line so it disappears. Okay, so we've got that. And I use the white line first because I can fix it easier. And then now once I've got this locked in, we're gonna switch to black because I want my very top edge to be black. There needs to be a black line. Where that white line was, I'm gonna replace it with a black line. So I'm loading my brush, just the very tip. I pull it out, and then I'm going to lay the miniature on its side, and I'm gonna pull away from myself, sort of. See, I'm pulling. And then you may want to change directions depending on where you are on the miniature. Okay, so then, and then if this line is not perfect, we'll make it skinnier in just a minute. So I messed up, I went a little bit on the red. So I grabbed a little bit of the dark red.
You're just off camera again.
Oh, shoot.
Just barely.
You grabbed a little bit of the dark red and covered it up. Okay. So let's go ahead and finish all of this. So I'm making sure if I make mistakes, I make it on the inside because we're gonna have other colors on the inside. That line was a little thick. That's okay, we'll fix it. And then coming around the corner. Okay, so now I've got this line of south's a little bit thick right here. So I can just fix that with the brown a little bit. So back to the non-metallic gold color. And remember I said if your black lines are too big, you can just make them, let's turn this sideways so you can see it better. Hold on, there. By painting a color next to it, I can make these black lines thinner. Okay, so now I just fixed it. A lot of this freehand is going back and forth. So what I want to do now is I want to put a little bit of dark in. So I'm going to mix a little bit of the black with this, and I'm going to put some shading in all the recesses. So the pure black with non-metallic shadow and mix a little bit. So we have this dark color. And then we can just make it a little bit darker in all the recesses. And the paint's sort of watered down, but but I want to make sure that we have shadows in each of this so we don't have to put shadows in after the freehand. And sometimes you don't still need to do that. But if we start off like this in the first place, it's much easier. So I'm just painting quick little blends at the bottom of each of these. So it's like about a 50-50 with my black. Okay, so now you should be able to see that I have a little bit of, and notice that I'm always spinning the miniature to be convenient for the way I need my brush strokes. Okay. Wash your brush, okay? So now we're gonna go up to other colors. So let's remember what the pattern looks like. Thank you, Mr. Wapple. So we can put some diamonds and such. So if you notice at the end, he starts with half a diamond and half a diamond here, and this has to make it work out. So sometimes it's good to sort of plot your pattern out. I don't think we'll have time to do that, so I may not. So I would sometimes measure the cloak and make sure that I can get the pattern to work. You can stretch out some little pieces. So really it's important is the end and then the middle. Those are the things you can see. So a lot of times you'll start in the middle and work your way left and right, and that will make sure that you end up sort of even both ways. So that is a good trick to do it. It's like if we're going to do letters here, say I had the word like hero, I would put the E and the R in the very middle, and then you work your way out. So you do E, then you do the R, and then you do the H, and then you do the O. So that way you're sort of working your way out, and that keeps it centered and even. So let's, so I'm going to start on the edge with this one. Okay, so now we're going to go to, most of my work is done with this mid-tone. So this is the gold non-metallic base. You do all your main painting with this, and then what we do is we'll add in the brighter and the darker colors. We'll sort of shade. We'll make little washes with this, and then we'll highlight with the white and the gold. So let's and even if you're nervous, yeah. So let's go ahead and we're going to put in the two lines. So the first line is this top one. I want to maintain the thinnest of a black line. So I've loaded my brush. I've spun off the paint. Let's see if you can see how much is on here. And you can even test on your finger. Sometimes I'll do this and test and see how I've got this nice line happening. So I can do about 3 of them, and then I start running out. So I'll need to load my brush again. So I've touched the center. So there's a little glob, there's a little glob of paint. And then I'm rubbing it a couple times. So it loads my brush, and then I sort of spin it. And if you see as I spin, it made a little trail. So I know that I have about the right amount of paint loaded on my brush. I can see it right on my palette. I've already, basically because there's no paint here, it's rubbing the paint off, and then it gets to the right amount. Okay, so then I go to the miniature, and then I'm going to paint. I missed, stroke, I missed. Oh, there we go, then I hit. Okay. So then I control my line, and the line typically never goes down the very first stroke. And so then sometimes you have to go over it a couple times to get it to show up. Okay, and so then we'll load it again. So I've loaded, I've spun the brush, and then I'm gonna, so I have to hold my breath sometimes when I do this here. Okay, so see, now I've got a line going down next to the black line. I'm thinking the black line's a little bit too thick still. I'll get back on. So I'll load my brush again. I've spun it. I have to wipe it off because I could see a little bit of a drop on there. And then we'll start again. Okay, so I've made that black line thinner. So I did like 3 strokes, and each time I made that black line a little bit thinner. And then you'll turn it. I've loaded the brush, I spin it. And then wipe it off a little bit. And then I hit, there we go. Now I'm gonna go the other way because it's easier to pull towards myself. And I've spun I could see that the brush wasn't in the right place, so I had to spin it so I got to that edge. So I put it here, I spin the brush so it hits right. And then we do that. So then it seems a little bit thick here. So I'll make my black line a little bit thinner by painting next to it and making it smaller. Okay. Way too much paint. And my paint is a little bit thin, so you can see the darker colors through it. And what happens on the high points, I will add more paint. You can see I painted over this. I've already done like 5 or 6 strokes, and it made the very top of it, brighter than when it goes around the corner. And that will, it's okay to leave it a little bit darker because it's supposed to shade by itself. Frame still. There we go. So we'll keep painting all the way across. Oops. So I just messed up a little bit, and I'll show you how to fix it. All about the freehand, you'll always make mistakes. And it's just a matter, are you willing to fix it? So right here, I went a little bit onto the black. So I just grab a little bit of black. And I make sure it's really thin. And then I carefully come in and I will just fix it. Okay, I fixed it. So I just had to do one little touch and then it fixes it. Okay, back to the non-metallic gold base. Okay, got too much on there. So you want to watch the tip of your brush to see how much paint's on there. It should look just like a, very thin cylinder and no globs. And you'll get used to how much is supposed to be on there. So I just tap just a little bit and then I pull it off, twist the brush, and then paint this. A little bit, twist the brush, miss, then I hit. There we go. So you'll see that I'm always doing lots of little strokes to get those lines in the right spot. There we go. Okay, so now we've got their first little line done. And let's see how much it's popping up because there's a black line next to it. And you can see that my black line did pop a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of the red, orange, black. I'm going to fix a couple of the spots where it sticks up a little bit too high. So I'm just going through and evening out some of the stuff that I messed up above. So it looks really smooth. And see, I'm just doing a couple, you just do have to do a couple dabs, just like tap it a couple times, and that sort of will fix us. So now we have a very straight line with this base coat line. So what we're going to do now is let's put some highlights on this so you can start seeing that if it's doing anything. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add a little, slow this paint over here, and I'm going to mix a little bit of the highlight with it. So we have a color that's a little bit higher. And so, so I'll load my brush. I'm going to pull the paint off. Okay, so here's something I just noticed. A lot of times when you wash your brush, I don't know if you can see that there's some water there. Let's see if I can show you what happens. So what happens is a lot of times you'll get a drop of water on your ferrule, and that will like kill your paint job. So what will happen is I will go to touch it, and then the water runs off of this and it'll run into your model, and it spreads all out, and it's horrible. So always when you wash your brush, I'm always, every time I come back to before I hit my palette, there's 2 drops of water here. I always touch the brush to the right. You can see the water that just spread it out right there. and then I sort of wipe that water off, and I've spun it like the pencil. So now my brush is clean and there's no water on it to get onto my paint job. Because I've had it before where you get a drop of water and that spreads out, it just ruins everything you did. So every time after you wash your brush, you're gonna hit your towel. So you take the brush and you sort of lay it backwards and then sort of wipe it off. Okay, back to highlights. So I'm gonna turn it sideways because that's convenient. I'm getting my highlight. What we're gonna do is we're going to, see, here's the flat side, and then I spin the brush, and there's a thin side. You see the difference? Flat, thin. Okay, so I've spun it to the thin side, so I'm gonna touch just the highest points on all of these. Okay, we'll touch that one. I'm gonna touch this one. So I'm going from all the folds to hitting the high points. Okay, load just the very tip of the brush, pull it out and spin, and then go back and touch. So I missed. Okay, so I got a little bit dry, so I'm gonna grab a little bit of water. So I mean, I just barely touched the tip on the napkin or the sponge, and then I spin the brush. There we go. And what happens is as the paint goes off, there's less and less paint on your brush. So what I can do is I can keep this highlight and I can go down just a little bit because the paint's going away on the brush, but I can still tint the paint next to it. Because what I'm doing is I'm putting paint down and I'm dragging it up and leaving it at the high point. And that creates a little micro blend because I am pulling the paint to the bright spot. Okay. So now can you see how we're starting to shine a little bit? All right. And then with that black line next to it, it really helps it pop up. I could put a line on the other side of it. So now I've washed my brush, I've laid the ferrule down. I've laid the ferrule down to wipe off the water. And we could put a thin black line in here. It probably won't make a difference, but if you want to be really fancy, we could do that. Okay, so you can see that I just want to show you the difference here. You can see a little bit. It doesn't make much difference. Okay, so now I just did the mix of 50-50 of the non-metallic gold highlight and this. And so now we can go through with just the pure highlight. So I'm pulling the color out, wiping off my brush. And then again, we're going to, it's sort of like a layering thing where each time we're touching a little bit higher. So I've turned the mini, I missed, I hit. Okay, and I can see this blend down here has a little too much of the other color showing through. So I'm going to add a little bit of the mid-tone, which is the base. So it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, there we go. And then if you want to make it really pop, we can add a little bit of white to the yellow. So it's mostly white with just a tinge of yellow. And then I touch each of these. So really I'm making dots. I just made a few little dots. Okay, see now that looks really shiny. Cool. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do some of the pattern, and then I'll show you how we're gonna wash down to get some dark change on these two, and it'll really look a lot better that way too. So if you want to go where I'm gonna very quickly use my mid-tone, the non-metallic base, and I'm gonna paint the line on the bottom. So it's easier to get this side of everything from this direction. And then I'll flip it and do the other direction. Since I'm just drawing big, thicker lines, I'm not too worried about how much paint's on my brush. I am concerned, but Okay, so I'm going to flip it over because it's easier to pull towards myself. Way too much paint on that. So always be looking at your brush, how much paint's on it, make sure there's no water. And if you're going fast and you mess up, just fix it. Okay, so realize that anytime your lines aren't totally perfect, you can always get your the gold shadow and you just paint right next to it and fix any mistakes that aren't, like if it's not totally even, just be willing to fix it really quick. It doesn't take very long. It's just painting a line right next to it. Okay, so now we got, can you see the difference between the top and the bottom now? What we haven't highlighted versus what we've highlighted. And see, now looking at this, I can see that I've wiped my brush and my ferrule off because I had to clean it. I can see that I've missed a little bit of the gold right here. So I'll just fix it. Okay, so now, very quickly, we have, and you should be able to tell the difference between the stuff that's been highlighted and what hasn't been highlighted.
Someone just asked that the bottom so far is just a gold base.
Yes. Yeah, the bottom is just gold base. Good question. Thank you, Scott. And then could you quick review the steps so far? That's a good point. Okay, so steps is doing a quick shade on the background. And then I put in a dark background, which is the non-metallic gold base. And then it's very hard to see, but I did shade in each of the crevices. I put some black with it. And so that I can see that the dark color will have some shade change too. And you could put a little bit of highlight on the top of the shade. So I can take this base shade and put a little bit of the brown in it. So basically I've taken this base shade and made it just a little bit brighter. And I can now go through and touch the tops of each of these. And it doesn't have to be super clean or whatever. You're just doing some quick blends because we're going to have stuff over it. But anything that's open and you can see through it, it'll just be easier to see it. Okay. So let's start on this side. I'm going to do the first triangle. So again, I always start with a gold metallic base. Okay, so loading the brush, and then we're going to now do a half of a diamond. So notice I missed, and then I hit it. So watch each stroke. I say missed, and then I missed, and I hit it, and then whatever here I missed, and then I hit it. So you're always sort of approaching it that way because it'll let you keep good lines that way. So the next thing, if we look at our drawing, so we had a diamond, we'll put dots in them, and we have to make plus signs next to them, and then we'll add on these little curved lines next to it. So always break your shapes down into things that you can see, because we all have done plus signs. If you've done any math whatsoever, you've probably done a plus sign. So that's something that we're already familiar with doing. So break things down into shapes that are things that you recognize. So we just did that. So for one side of the plus, I'm going to pull towards myself. And then after this, I'm going to move the miniature. So I loaded my brush, I spun it, and then I approach the miniature, and then I spin it so I get the thin side of my brush. And I'm going to try to draw a line right in the middle. And so I missed. There we go. Okay. And if you don't want to put in the plus signs or the other straight lines, this actually would look a very, very nice pattern. Just doing diamonds and straight lines would look very nice too. And if you notice next to here that I have a little flub, see where the gold sort of goes down there? So I grab some of my base color and I'm just going to fix it. So I come right up to here, I miss. There we go. See, it took me several strokes to get it, but then you just sort of clean up that edge and it looks really good. So now let's turn it the other way. Okay, load the brush. And then we'll put the plus on this. And most of the times it takes a couple strokes to get it in there right. Okay, so we got a little plus there. Okay, and then load some more paint on the brush. I spin it. And then I can do the little curved line. You end up holding your breath a lot on the. Okay, so it dried before I got there. So I just have to get a little bit of water on my brush to clean it. I wiped it off. And then I'm going to load it again. And then make sure I can do a little thin little line. And there's that one line, and we'll do the one on the other side. Okay. So now we can do another diamond. And then in his picture that his lines went a little bit beyond this last one, so I'll just have to add that in. There we go. And on this side, I'll do the same thing. I have to add a little bit extra. Cool. All right. So now it's time to repeat the pattern. So we're going to put in a diamond here. So sometimes it's good to put little construction lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put dots in so I can figure out where my diamond's supposed to go to make sure it looks right. Because if it's not, then I can fix it. Okay, so notice I put 4 lines in. And this way, I can see if that looks right before I even commit to doing it, having to repaint everything. So it does look right to me. So now I can do just connect dot to dot. I use construction dots all the time because it's really easy to fix a dot. So like if it's wrong, I can go back and fix it with a little bit of paint. So I had to spin my brush because it wasn't at the thin part. So as I'm pulling towards myself, I do this one, and then I spin the miniature so I can pull towards myself, and then I will do the next one. You see how it sometimes takes a couple strokes. Okay, and then I can put a little dot in the center. There we go. Oops, so there's a dot in the center. Okay, let me draw one more line and then we'll switch to the other part so we don't. Sorry, I got my fingers in the paint here. Let me do this one more line super quick, and then so we can move on to the striping on the robe. So I draw the line. Oops, I'm off. Sorry, I'm off screen. Do the line, making the plus. And then I have 2 little bent things. Okay, you see I went a little bit fast right here, so I'm just going to fix that. So you get a little bit of the dark color, and you're going to do to fix things, you just tap right next to it. So the paint went a little bit over, so all I'm doing is I'm going to go tap, 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 tap. Need a little bit more paint. Sort of tap next to it until it fixes. There we go. So there, I fixed it. So what we need to do is, if you see how the top we've highlighted, and you don't see this highlight through the pattern. So what it is I've identified this as my highlight, so I need to continue this highlight all the way through that part of the fold. So I'm moving up to the gold highlight, And so everywhere on that thing, so this is going to be a high point down here at the bottom. So I highlight that. And then you're going to highlight the part of, oops, I'm off camera. I apologize. I just didn't see it. I just highlighted right here on the top. And then I'm going to highlight any part of this. So there's basically there's a cylinder that goes through here. So any part of that that touches the this other part of the figure, I'm going to paint that too. So right here and here. And then the dot, I would say, would be a little bit. So now you see how the whole thing has the same look. And then what we need to do is we do need to shade. So this part is light, and then if I move over, this is dark. But right now it's all the same color. So what we're gonna do is gonna take a little bit of my shade color, and I'm gonna mix it. I'm mixing it with my mid-tone. So I have a color like halfway in between the shade and this. Okay. And then I bring it over here. I'm going to add a little bit of water. So pick up a little bit of water because I'm going to do sort of a wash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash over this. So it's very, very milky. And what you do is you just sort of wash it over. You like, I'm going to touch. So it's a very thin shade and you sort of wash it over the pattern a little bit. Oh, I didn't do it on screen. So it sort of recesses into the back. And sometimes you do have to fix it back a little bit. There we go. So this gives us sort of an undulation of light to dark. And I want to fix the inside of this just a tad. Let's get all my breath there. There we go. Let's see, I'm doing little dots and then I sort of fix that so I can see that better. You see now how we're sort of, the thing moves with the colors. So for the last little bit, I want to switch. So you can see how we can do this crosshatch pattern on the back of our thing. So a little bit ago, we cut our piece of tape. And the nice thing about this is I can just sort of put this on there and I can visually see if this looks like what I want. I'm just doing this to help make my construction lines. You can do it with paper, or you can do it freehand too. It's just nice to see. You can visually see if I like it or not. Okay, so I think I'm going to start. A good starting point is probably at this front corner. And then we can go up. Okay. So I'll go back to my white. And I'm thinning it down quite a bit because I don't, if it's in the wrong spot, I don't want to fix it. So you can see that I've added quite a bit of water. So I have enough so it's not gonna, enough paint so it's not gonna like go everywhere, but then I can just make marks. Okay, so basically I'm just gonna come here on this side and I just touch, and I can just sort of paint down this. And if you mess up, you just sort of fix the colors.
It's starting to get off screen just a little bit.
There you go. Okay. That looks good. Okay, so I've got my first line here. Just want to show you what it looks like. Let me put this back, so I'm going to paint the other side of it too. Okay, so I want to show you that I'm going to paint both sides super quick. I'm just putting little lines, and you can fix them later. But you need a line in each spot so that you can just sort of. Okay, so see, I've got 2 of them in, and I'll slide it down. I'll also eyeball this if you want. You don't have to do this. This is just, if you're nervous about things, I like to give techniques so that you can be successful by just using some techniques. So basically, I'm just marking all the high points. Just do one more line, and I'll do the opposite way. Okay, so that's one direction. Let's look at the other direction. That looks good. Then I'll pull it off to see if I like that. I do. It's fighting me a little bit here, just like, there we go. Yeah, almost there. Okay, so I'm not going to finish the whole pattern, but you can see that I've got a very nice little grid, and it looks pretty straight because I've used a straight edge, and this will help me do this. And so now I'm going to switch from using the white. I'm going to go straight to my mid-tone, which is the golden metallic base. So let's just do little parts right here. So I can follow my pattern. So I'm doing all the lines that are in the same plane because then I don't have to keep moving the miniature. And if you mess up, you just fix it. It's not a big deal. Now this one ended up looking, as I did it fast, it looks like it's a little close. So I'm gonna take some of my dark color. I'm mixing the orange with the red because I basically just look at what color it is in that area, and then you just fix it. So that seems to be red, so I'll add some more orange. So a big key to doing this freehand stuff is being willing to fix it and just knowing how to fix it. And if the color is not quite right, then you just move on your palette so it fixes. Okay. So that one ended up a little bit thick at one point, but we'll fix it. So I'm not super worried. Okay, we'll spin it over and do the other side. So there's always a lot of refining that sort of goes on with the freehand. It's not too bad. Okay, now we'll spin it. We'll do the other direction. Okay, so we're good on time still.
You're a little bit off camera again.
There we go. Sorry, I started getting the zone doing this a little bit, and so sometimes I do have to paint that same line several times to get it to work. Okay, starting to look good here. Let me just finish this one here. Oops, off camera, sorry. Okay, so let's see, do we have any questions here? Okay, when doing something as complex as a mural, you had shown, do you start with the center and work out, or do you work one side to the other? Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, David. Here is a hint what you can do if you're wanting to do sort of things. I sort of work my way all around on the miniature. So here's for the advanced class, I typically will do something like this. I have made a little sticker or a stencil. You can even do that with a copier. You can shrink something down or make a stencil if you've got a paper cutter, or you can cut it out with a X-Acto knife, and you can make the shape of it. And then typically I'll start doing a black line around the whole thing, because then when I fill colors in, then that black line can be thin and still be seen. So I'll typically, so that's one method to do that. Here's like on this example, on this one here, I made little stickers of these deer heads, and I basically painted the whole thing black. You can see how we're putting the color on top of it to cover up those black edges, and then it'll really shine at some point. When I first did a lot of these things, it was very hard. I'm not very good at drawing, and so sometimes I will use a copier and shrink things down to fit what I need. Now, on this, you can see, remember I asked us to have very dark and light shades. So most of this is getting covered up with this freehand. But look, right in the crevices, I've got dark, and then here I've got light. So that's why I want you to do quick blends, because otherwise we'd have to come back and manually do all of these things. But since we did these quick blends, you can't tell that they're not perfect blends, but it looks right because I've got light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And then we just have to paint the freehand to match those patterns. And then you'll see that I did it super fast. So there's some places I flubbed, and you'll just sort of fix them. It won't be a big deal. So let me, was there any other questions? Okay, with the lines in the recess of the cloak, do you make them thinner? Does that add a shadow effect, or is it a goal to make them the same thickness all around? The goal is to make the lines all the same thickness, but the line itself should really, as it undulates, high point should be lighter and low point should be darker. And so it should be the same thickness all the way along, but change colors as it goes up and down. We had another question. Do you have a finished version of this so we can get an idea of what we're trying for here? I don't have a complete finished version, but this is sort of where we're going here. We're going to do a woven pattern on the back. And so then I'll show it. This one had them, you can choose two different ways. I can do like these ones, I did all of the lines underneath. So you see all my black lines are on the bottom half, but I think it might be fun to actually make it so it's like woven like a pie crust or something like that. So maybe let's play with that. So let's throw in some of the black lines. We're going to put just a black line on the bottoms. So I'm going to grab some of my black. I'm grabbing some of the wetter area and I'm dragging it over. So it was sort of a little bit dry right here. So I've grabbed a little bit of the wetter and I've pulled it into a little pile right here that I can sort of pull off too. And right now, like you can see, most of my brush is covered with black. So I've got a little bit too much. So I'm going to clean my brush. I am going to dry off the ferrule. And then we'll load this brush. So I'm pulling it, and then I see how we're starting to get small lines. So as I pull the paint away from the big pool, I start drawing. You can just visually see that you're starting to get little lines, and that will aid you in doing very good lines on here. Okay, so let's do this a little bit woven this time. So I'm going to pull towards myself. I have to spin the brush so it's to the thin piece, and then I'm going to, so the first one's going to go under. That one went, oh, let's go over on the first one. And then we'll go under on the next one. Okay, so it's not, sometimes it doesn't flow quite right, so you just start over. If your paint ends up getting sort of watery, or I'm almost to the point where I'm going to put black out again because it's not cooperating quite. There we go. Over, and that one's under. And this one. And the black might mess up some of your color, but you're going to come back and fix it. So every other one's going to be in a different place. And realize you're moving sort of around. What I'm doing is I'm putting black lines on the bottoms of all these. And so this one is, the black line stops because it's going to be under this one, and the black line goes over this one because it's, the other ones that go behind it. We're doing it like a weaving type texture. So we'll do that. And then I'm going to go the opposite way. So this one's over. So you're always maneuvering the miniature around to get where you can draw the lines. Oops. I got a little bit of black on the yellow, doesn't matter because I'm just going to cover it up. Okay.
Dan asked in the chat, do you seal the cloak before doing freehand on the surface?
I do not. I don't worry about it. So if you were going to change like to oils, like I need to paint oils on this or something, then you would need to seal it. For these, I don't ever really ever seal my miniatures. So, okay. So under is messing with my brain today. So this one needs to be under. So we're doing this weaving texture. And under. Okay, so you can see how we're starting to pop now a little bit. See how that black line makes a big difference. And you can see that a lot of my black lines went over some of the yellow already put in, but it's okay because I'm just going to go back and fix it. You don't worry too much about making little errors. The whole process of this is just, you can fix it. So there's a little bit of black right here, so I just put some paint over it. And then you'll see it just starting dialing in. So a lot of times it looks looks ugly, and don't worry about it because you know that you can fix it. Okay. Just make sure to do my pattern right here. I just had looked at my brush just now and I noticed that it was a little thick, and so then I have to fix it. That one was under, this one has to be over. guess I shouldn't do this to myself in a class time. Let's see, over. Okay, so yeah, that's starting to you can see the freehand a lot better just because of this black line. Under, over. This has to be over. Okay, so now we're starting to dial in, right? And you could even, if you wanted, you could put little like fleur-de-lis or things in between all of these. And again, once you dial this all back in, just like the bottom, we need to come in and put in highlights. So I can move to my highlight color, which is the highlight. And everywhere these touch the tops, off screen, we touch the tops, we can start putting in little highlights. And you just basically, I'm moving, I'm ignoring, once the pattern's sort of done, I'm sort of ignoring where they are, and I'm just putting the highlights on everywhere the top of the fold touches the pattern. So I'm not so worried about where the pattern is, I'm worried about where the shape of the cloak is. So this is the top of the cloak here. So you go through and you work your way up on everything. Okay, and then you can go through and you can put in a little bit of shading. I typically like to have a little bit of orange tint to the shading. So you can't really tell much difference. It has a little bit of an orange tint. So then in the valleys, I can go through in here and I'm just tapping. There's not very much, there's like, if I rub on the side of my hand, there's look how much paint's on my brush. There's like hardly, you can't even see it really. So I've just got I'm doing these little micro washes. So it's pretty thin. And I'm just sort of tapping in the recesses to change, because right now it's really bright. It's like the same color. So I just have to go tap, tap, just to make it a little bit darker. And so up the entire fold on the design, I come through and I sort of tap to make it a little bit darker. So that it looks like, so it gives you some feel of it going up and down. You see how it's not quite as bright? All right, so do we have any questions? We have 15 more minutes or a little bit less. So do we want to show something else, or do you want to keep going? What will be helpful, or I'd like to discuss anything that's confusing you now so that we don't leave you confused. Let's see, let's look in the chat here. Beginner question, how do you keep from getting brush boogers? Okay, that's a good point. So they're talking about is what happens is you'll see as I'm loading my brush a lot of times that as you move to the miniature, it's already dried and you'll get like this ball at the end. So you have to really avoid that because that'll stop you from making lines. And so I normally have to clean it off and then I will wash my brush again. And then I dry it on my towel. So I just want to show you every time I wash my brush, I just wash my brush. I bring it back to here. There's a big drop of water. Watch that water goes away. And then I wipe my brush off and I'm spinning it as I wipe it. So just like I was talking about with the, with the pencil, and that sort of gets the water out and makes my brush into a point again. And then start again. The bush, what's happening is if you're getting a lot of paint drying, it has to do with how moist your paint is. If you can see in the camera here, this is starting to get a little bit of skin on it. And so that's going to know this paint's starting to dry, and that could cause you issues. So if your paint's not cooperating, if it's too wet or too thick, you just start again. Don't fight it, just put it in. The other thing that will help you with that is if you put a drop of the flow improver in. So I can see that this color is getting a little wet. And so what times I will put, so I put a drop here, and then I can use what I need. Okay, instead of just mixing the whole thing up, I can grab a little bit, and then I can mix it in this area here. And see, so now my paint's like should start flowing super well. It's interesting. I've seen that actually adding flow improver makes it dry on the palette faster. But for helping you get smooth lines to avoid that, it's really good thing. You'll like that a lot. All right, so what else? Let's see, what other questions do we have? Let's see. Scott Davis asks, how do you link to the bottom pattern? I'd like to check it out and complete it later. I'm just stopping it at the black line. So so basically this line comes down here, and I see that I fudged a little bit there, but I'll come back in and I'll put that line back in. And I'll work this out. I'll off camera, I can probably speed through this pretty quick and I'll get an example up on my thing so you can see it.
Yeah, I believe he wanted like a link to the pattern reference that you have.
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'm glad somebody's paying attention. Yes, I will find that picture and send it to you. That would be great. Yeah, I just looked up James Wapple. What's the name of that show? Sorry, I'll think of it. Game of Thrones. So these are made by, well, they're sold by Comini or not, but they're licensed through Dark Sword Miniatures, and we love Dark Sword. And James was painting a lot of the studio models for them, and I just thought that was a super cool pattern to do that. And if you want, I've got the picture saved, so just give me personal message me or send something on my painter area, and I'll be happy. I'll just send you the file so you don't have to look for it because I saved it. Okay, and then David asks, what do you do to sharpen the edges when needed? Any tricks beyond going back and forth with base and other paints? Really, it is being willing just to go back and forth and fix, and you'll sharpen, and it does sharpen everything up. It's really so small that most people won't even notice, but just a few couple taps and thin lines fix most of your areas. And so a lot of the freehand is everybody messes it up. It's just, are you willing to just take a couple seconds to fix it? Because I can see even here, I've got a few little flubs, but just with a couple, once your pattern covers most mistakes sort of go away anyways, and so you don't have to worry about it. And if there is a problem, it's just a super quick fix. Let's see. Danny asks, what do you do if the paint is too translucent? I do like it being a little bit translucent at first. That is a very good question. And you'll notice that in these areas, my paint is somewhat translucent. And I like that because it sort of self-shades itself. But then what I do is I will paint the line several times. So down in here, this line was painted once or twice. But up here, you'll see that I'm always repeating my brush stroke. So I'll paint, paint, paint. And you'll see that more and more paint will getting on. So down at the bottom, it maybe has 2 brush strokes, but the top has 3. And so just with my base color, I have made a shade by just how much paint gets put on the miniature. And if once you get really good, then you don't have to shade the down area too much because it's translucent and it's showing that dark color below. And then if you don't want it dark color, want to even color across, then you would just have to put a couple layers of that same color on it. That was a really good question. Yeah, there's all these things that happen and you don't realize why they're happening, like the spinning of the brush and sharpening your thing. It took me a long time of watching another painter do it and figure out, oh, that's what she's doing. And then I started doing it. It's like, okay, I see why she's doing that. It's very helpful. And so there's all these little things that we do. We don't know why we're doing and why they work, but and that's sort of why I wanted to show you the process I go through, and then you'll notice little things that sort of help you with that. Okay, any more questions like that? Let's see. You can just post the file in Discord. Okay, Corey, thank you. I will absolutely put that file in the Discord, and it'll be under my name, under the Painter's Alley. I will just drop that picture in there. Let's see, anybody else have questions? I would hope that everybody would post their miniatures in there, and I'd be happy to comment on them. if anyone would like, just tell me in the Discord. I'd be happy to open a table. And sometimes there's questions you have and it's hard to figure them out without asking somebody. So if we want to go open a table where we can all work on these, I'd be happy to do that. And we can spend some time painting these, and I will answer questions and see if we can troubleshoot the difficulties you might be having. Let's see, any more questions. If someone wants to retype any questions that I've missed, I'd be happy to help those. And I'm always willing to help and critique your stuff even after this weekend if you work on it. And if you you'll see my name on the Discord, you can just contact me. I'm interested in helping people get better. I took a bunch of years to figure out some of this stuff, and it's funny because I had a friend that had just started painting, and within a year he was already up to, you know, better than my level. And I was like, dang, I shouldn't have taught him. No, I'm just kidding. But but it's just fun sometimes, you know, knowledge that took a long time to gain, if I can pass it on to someone and make their journey a little bit better, I would love to do that. Okay, Scott asks us, do you have a painting Facebook or social media, Patreon, etc.? I do not have a painting Facebook. I'm pretty lazy putting that on, but I will share things and be able to help. I do like Miniature Monthly and Jim Wapple, and I watch Anne and all the other painters at Reaper, and I do enjoy that. Janice asks, for a model like this, what would you do with the rest to get a finished model, hood and dress? Would you leave them plain or do something else? I hadn't thought about that. That's a good question. I think I would probably leave the cloak like this. I might end up changing this middle area, or you could put some other patterns on it. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that yet. That's a good question. Maybe some other people have better ideas than me, and we can, if we post them in the group chat, we can all help each other. Well, thank you, Amber. That's very kind of you. Really do want you to be successful. So please try these, and we have any feedback. Let's see, any other comments? Oh yeah, the Pathfinder and Nora has some cool runes that says by Corey, so you can look on there. But I hope that you can walk away today and not think that freehand's intimidating anymore. And I would not refer to any of you in this class anymore as beginners, because now we should be advanced. And really, it's just, can you paint lines, and are you willing to fix your little flubs? David asks, what the sticker stuff you used for murals? Oh, you mentioned, that's a good question. In my other classes, I actually show you how to do that. And I tried several things. Like I'd used this yellow tape, which is a Tamiya tape. I'll show you I took the top off somewhere. This is just this yellow tape's a Tamiya tape you can buy at hobby stores. The stuff I use is shelf contact paper. So you go to Walmart or whatever, and you get the shelf paper. So it's and the nice thing is it's actually less sticky than the other things, and so you can cut about anything out on that, and then you can put it on the miniature, and it's flexible. And I just use the back of my brush to sort of push it in, and that way you can get the sticker to fit the shape, the shape of the miniature. Or you just like a rubber tip or something, and you just sort of squish it in, and then you can either freehand paint around it, or you can use a rattle can and spray over it, and it'll leave the pattern behind it. But I've found that's really nice because it peels off and it won't take your paint off. Any tips and tricks when painting an illustration like your antlers in the curved area like this? I basically paint them with the base coat, and then I will highlight anywhere the cloth changes shape. So really you have to get the whole shape, your mid-tone color, your mid-yellow, maybe a mid to darker yellow, and then you come in and then you'll shade and highlight based on the shape of what it's being put on. Dean asks, what do you think of using nail art stickers as a guide for freehand drawing? Absolutely. if somebody's already drawn it, why not already use it? If you have something, use it. Like if I could sculpt a tube, but you can buy, tubes or, things like that. So there's no point in redoing something if you already have it. Kendrick asks, is there a code for an emote for this class? I didn't know how to do it, so I was lame and didn't make one. So I should get with John and see if he can help me figure that out. But these have been some really good questions. I appreciate everybody taking the time to type those because it does help everybody else too. I just hope that you've all been effective and hope you will try this. And maybe this is not as intimidating as we thought. And really, you can do this with any set of colors you want. This could be done with silvers, and I mean, you see on the back here. I just happen to do the non-metallic because it illustrates really well. But you can see this was done with grays, and it's just the same process. It's drawing lines and then painting around it. Also realize that painting freehand is also painting damage and stuff like this. So any little dots or damage is freehand also. So this part right here, we got 2 minutes. We'll go here. So this part here is just taking some watered down color and just dragging it down. And then that's freehand. And then see all this damage? There is, oops. So there's damage here, but then there's little white dots and lines that edge the thing so you can see where it is. If you look down here, another trick is if you take the sponge, sometimes you get in miniature packs, you get the little sponge, and what you can do is you can dip it in black, and then you take it and you just sort of, oops, I just dropped it. You take it in black, you dip it in here, and then you just keep tapping it until it's almost gone, and then you can use it like a stamp. And you can see where I've stamped in, getting back in frame, sorry. You can see where I've stamped in little, like this was done, the thing was, the back of this is black, and then I've stamped in white little dots. And it makes sweet little damage. And so any of these things are all little freehand. Just realize that scratches and stuff are never straight lines. They're odd shaped, and they normally have a black line next to a white light. Do other painters mind if we steal their patterns? I steal stuff all the time. So I mean, look, if you look at you go to the fine art galleries, there's always people there painting because they're using those things to learn how to do it. And so I would absolutely encourage you to do that. Well, I would like to thank everyone for taking their time to be here today. And if you do ever need any other help, I'd be happy to help, and I'm glad you could be here. So have a great day.